excited for our next speaker. We have Gavin, founder and chief strategy officer for Optage. Danny has been in the SEO field since what, 2011? He manages a team of 30 plus that provides services in SEO, paid search, paid social, customer reputation management. He's also an adjunct professor at the University of Houston, at the College of Business. He has a lot of master's level classes, education, executive education, and social media classes. He's also the host of the Digital Marketing Mentor, which is a relatively podcast. You just started that in January, a year ago. Okay, fantastic. And we're excited to have this presentation today on assignment sales and keywords. So without any further ado, let's welcome Gavin. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It's a huge honor to be here. I think my first day of search was in 2014. So this stage has had a lot of awesome people. And some of the talks that I enjoyed the most at SEO Search were the ones that were very practical and taught me things. So my presentation today is going to be pretty in the weeds from a practical perspective, but there should be something for everyone to learn. I'm excited to present to you today. All right, so just a little bit about me. I'm from Houston, so hopefully the Dallas people don't hear me. But yeah, I've been an adjunct professor at UH. I love teaching and have a large family and have a lot of fun. So this is the agenda for today. We're going to go over the problem, the method, and we're going to go through Search Console, Analytics 4, and a little bit of spreadsheet fun for those people who like spreadsheets, and then the solution. So a lot of us in the SEO world, we have to deal with clients, right? And, you know, they're constantly telling us, or even if we're initially trying to pitch, that we're spending a lot of dollars on SEO, and how do we know that it's actually working? So yeah, I understand. I see that there's increasing traffic, but how do I know that it's from your efforts, right? It could just be that we're naturally growing because we're spending money on all these other channels, and, you know, how do we know it's really you, Danny? You know, if we go a little bit deeper, maybe it's just all branded traffic that is being generated from other marketing channels. How do we know that it's the non-branded that technically you're working on and trying to get us new people who didn't know about us? So this can be a real big challenge, and it's very difficult, especially when you have a bunch of clients from New York who aren't exactly nice. So we have the SEO agency, and we sit around the table, and we're like, yeah, client has a really good point. What are we going to do? Right? We're showing them that organic traffic is increasing. We can even show that sales are attributed to organic traffic. But maybe he's right. Maybe there is this halo effect from their digital advertising, and it's primarily brand traffic. And then we're kind of screwed. So you've got pondering Paul. He's like, okay, we kind of have the pieces that we need in order to figure out what to do, but I don't know how to connect them and what are we supposed to do, right? We've got landing page visits and revenue data in GA4. We have query and page data in Google Search Console. But how do we combine them in order to create a story, a narrative that will help us explain what's going on with our client and to show our value? So what's the actual issue? We know that GA4 does not provide organic search query data. We know this is since 2011. So people have been around in 2010, 2011. That change was really tough. But for those who started after, they don't really know difference. So it's difficult to be able to look at keywords and to see what was the revenue that was generated relative to keywords. For those people in Google Ads or paid search, you know, that's a given. It's really easy to see that. But even there, they're hiding a little bit of the data. And then the issue with Search Console is it gives me the query data, but I can't easily export the queries per page. I can only look at one export or the other, or I can potentially filter out one page at a time. So for example, if I wanted to look at my homepage, I could filter by my homepage and see all the queries that show up based off of my homepage. But to get all the queries for every single page directly out of Search Console is difficult. So the solution. But first, what I'm about to show you is an estimation or educated guess based on data. So it's not a perfect model. But in our industry, especially as data is being hidden more and more, we still need to have educated guesses and directional points of where we can go. So is this the absolute truth? It's definitely not. But it does allow us to put together that framework to make better decision-making and insights into the results and the ROI of our work. So who can complain about that? All right, so we can continue. So the steps to the solution, which are pretty simple, but is number one, grab the Search Console data using Google, using the Google Sheets plugin, which I'm going to show you. Then grab the correct GA4 data, and then finally bring everything to Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets and VLOOK up and pivot it up. So I'm going to go through this pretty deep. So some of you may be very familiar with these tools, some may not, and maybe you'll learn a new thing or two. So let's first dive into Google Search Console. So for those who aren't familiar, or hopefully most of you are, here's Google Search Console. Where we find a treasure trove of data is going to be in the search results, which you see is highlighted on the left. And then you've got the tabs at the bottom, queries, pages, countries. Like I said before, you can look at the queries, you can look at the pages, but you can't necessarily see them all together. So how do we solve that? So there's a really cool plugin for Google Sheets. How many people here use plugins for Google Sheets? All right, just a handful, so hopefully now you know a little secret. So there are plugins for lots of different things. You can connect AI, ChatGPT, into Google Sheets. That's for another day. But for this one in particularly, this is called Search Analytics for Sheets, and that's the website. They're both free and paid versions. And basically, I'm going to show you how you access it, but once you have the plugin, which opens up on the right-hand side, you can then decide which site you want to pull data from. And this is taking Google Search Console's API. Choose your date range. And one thing that I'm going to stress throughout today is it's really important that you keep the same date range no matter where you're pulling data. Sometimes you forget, okay, what am I looking at? And then the key here is that group by. I want to pull data out both by page and query. So that's actually going to give me 2 columns of data. It's going to have the page, the URLs, and then all the keywords for those URLs. You can create a new sheet or import an active sheet. You can have filters as well if you don't want to pull all the raw data in. They have another tool on the paid version where you can pull URL inspection data as well, which is pretty cool. So basically, those people who don't really know how to use the API, this is a great way to be able to pull data out and actually get more data than a regular export. They'll come out with more bells and whistles. It is limited to about 25,000 rows, but on the paid version, you can get more. But man, for free to get 25,000 rows, that's a pretty good deal. Okay, so just what you would see here is, so where you would access that would be by clicking on extensions in the top bar, and over there you'd be able to either download a new plugin, and then once that plugin is connected, you can access it. And this is what it would look like in the full screen. So once I have that data exported, this is kind of what it looks like. I took away like the click impression data, so that would actually show numbers there. But you can see that what it's done now is it's exported all the queries. And what I have highlighted in orange are going to be one specific page, the kitchen backslash tile trends 2024. And now I can pull all the different queries that are specifically related to every individual, to every single page. So this isn't really sorted in the best way, but you get an idea that I can cover what it is. And then naturally, just the nomenclature at the tab at the bottom, that's how the plugin will automatically, if you create a new sheet, that's how it's going to name it. So the next step of what you want to do in this process is, now that you have the pages and the queries, you want to create a new column called type. And type is where you're going to assign which queries are brand queries and which are non-branded. And you know, just practically, it's a lot easier to find the branded keywords. So filtering out the brand, usually by like the first 3 letters of the brand name can be pretty good, and it will allow you to quickly assign everything. And then after that, you can always add the non-branded. And remember, there are misspellings, so you might have to go through it 1 or 2 times in order to get it right. So just some notes when you're cleaning up the data. In order to, later on, when we are going to be comparing the Search Console data to the Google Analytics data, we're going to have to remove the information at the top. So like the brand.com, that's just an example, but you're going to have to get rid of everything up to the first slash. And you also want to watch out for any subdomains. If your Search Console is looking at the whole domain, including subdomains, and you only want to look at a specific domain. Another thing is, in order to get the most accurate data, because we're trying to get like the total information of every single page, it's important to get rid of parameters or queries. So what you can do there is you can use a little trick in Excel or in Google Sheets where you divide by the question mark, and then you can get that query data out. One thing to keep in mind, because we're specifically talking about e-commerce here, is that when it comes to Shopify, we know that, as an example of a platform, I know a lot of others, but with Shopify, a lot of products will have individual variants, and those variants will be a parameter. So if you do remove those parameters, then you're going to lose the actual page of what it is. So that's just a side note. You'll have to be able to understand which parameters to remove and which ones to keep. But once you have that, then you can pivot up the data again. Here's an example of what that pivot would look like in order to now combine all the individual line items of those pages where you've removed the parameters. Okay, so we've just prepared our Google Search Console sheet. Now let's go into Google Analytics 4 and get an idea of what's going on. Okay, how many people here are still scared of Google Analytics 4? Okay, so let's rephrase the question. How many people hate Google Analytics 4? All right, that's better. Cool. Yeah, it's a beast. So that's why I thought it'd be good to spend a little bit of time just to look at it a little bit deeper, even though this is technically about SEO, but it can help for Google Analytics as well. Okay, so to get the data that we want from Google Analytics 4, let's take a look at this page. So on the left, you can see that we can select the user acquisition report. The two reports you need to think about here are user acquisition, and then the report under it is going to be traffic acquisition. The difference between those two is user acquisition is basically showing you where people came from when they first came to the website. So sort of first click attribution. And then traffic acquisition is going to be more like last click attribution, which people are more familiar with naturally from how Google Analytics used to work. So when you're looking at this report, I like to pull both the first click attribution data and the last click attribution data to take a look. But it could be that the client is like, I want to know when was SEO the thing that brought the person, in the first place, and nothing else helped, right? Now that's not a reasonable request because we know that there's a lot of different things that come together, but sometimes they ask that. So you might have to look at the user acquisition report a little bit more strongly. Okay, so what's the problems that we have here? Or sort of what do we have to set up in order to get this data correct? So number one, in this report data, where do I see revenue? Right? There's no revenue, right? I remember those days where revenue was in every report. So let's take a look at how can we filter the data? So we're only going to look at organic search. And then number two, how can we get revenue back into the report? And I know it's like a little scary, but this is something that you have to get used to when it comes to GA4. You gotta add things and subtract and do things in order to get what you want. Okay, I just spoke about this, but about the first user and session. So once again, when you've got source and medium, right, where do people come from? There's going to be the first user source and medium, which is, once again, first click attribution, where did they first come? And then session dimensions is going to be more about that last click. So when you're in Google Analytics 4, it can be confusing because you've got all these different source and mediums. There's like 3 or 4 to choose from. So specifically here, to keep it simple, we've got our first user and then our session dimensions. Think of it as first click and last click. And that will allow us to look at 2 different perspectives when we're pulling our data. Okay, so in the top right corner, you can click on the pencil icon in order to edit the report. Now, a lot of you might go into Google Analytics now and be like, man, I don't have the pencil icon. And that's because you need to have a certain level of access. I believe it's edit and animate access. If you don't, you're not going to be able to do this. So that's just a caveat. Okay, next, it opens up a window on the right-hand side, which allows you to add metrics. In short, dimensions are the rows and metrics are the columns. So what we need to do here is we need to add a revenue column. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on metrics, and there it's going to show me all of the current columns that appear on Google Analytics 4, on this report. And then at the bottom, I have the ability to add additional columns. So I go there, click on the open cell, I typed in total, so now I have total revenue, total purchasers, I can do product revenues, so there's different things you could do. Use that, and then it's important that after you're done, click apply so that it actually saves the changes. Once you have that set up, you have to hit save again. So in the top right corner of the report, you're going to click save, and now you have 2 options. One is to save changes to the current report, and this will change the way the report views to every single person in the organization. So you have to be careful. If it's just you, it's fine. Adding another column doesn't really hurt, but just be aware. The other option is to save as a new report. You can call it Danny's, e-commerce revenue report, and create that as a new report, and that can be just for you. It just really depends on what your standards are inside of the organization. And as you can see, we successfully added another column. There you see total revenue, and now it appears. So another thing you can do here practically is you can always go and remove columns. If there's columns that you just don't like and they're not necessary, you can hide those away as well, something which you couldn't do in old Google Analytics. Okay, so now we've added our column, and now we can click on Add a Filter. So this is where the filters are for data on our report. At this point, there's different ways that I can filter out this data. You can see that I've selected first user source medium. Remember, first user means that it's giving attribution to the first click. What was the first thing that brought the person to the website? I'm going to choose contains and organic. Naturally, every single source that was organic is going to show up. If you want to get really specific and only look at Google data, then you can go ahead and filter out just the Google organic search. There's no right or wrong. It just makes sure to tell the story clearly, because if the customer, or if you're saying, hey, this is the Google data, but you've brought in all organic data, that can be a little bit off. So once you have that, you can click apply. All right, so now we can see the filter work because the only row that I have is organic search. So what I need to do is actually need to pull in the pages. Once again, I want to get all the pages so that I can see the revenue per page. So the way I do that is there's a blue cross, click on that, and it now lets me bring in a secondary dimension to have basically another column. So here I'm going to type in landing page so that I can pull the landing page, query string, click on that. And now I've got a really nice one column is organic search, and another column is landing page and query string, and I've done what I need to. Somebody asked, Danny, what's the point of having that first column, organic search? You could technically make the first column the landing page query string itself, because you're filtering out the data. I kind of like to have that column there because it kind of reassures me the fact that I only have organic search data, and therefore when I do export this, I can double check and make sure that there's no other non-organic search data that's there. Okay, and next you need to export. It's not really clear where you export the data, right? That icon, I think you can do a little bit better. But that icon means export in the top right corner, and then you can send the email, schedule the email, download the file. In this case, the point is to download the information. Okay, so we've got our two data sources. Now we're gonna have a little bit of spreadsheet. Okay, so the first thing that we are going to do is we are going to create a pivot table specifically on type, so on brand and non-brand. And this is just an example of what that pivot looks like. Now what I'm able to do now is I'm now gonna have a list of pages, and I'm gonna see the clicks for the branded terms that brought people to that page, and I'm going to see the clicks from the non-branded terms that are going to bring people to that page. So that grand total, let's look at that first one, is going to be 32. So what I see is that 28% of those clicks or traffic to that page was branded, and 72% was non-branded. Sorry about that. So we're starting to see, right? We're starting to see, it's sort of a light at the end of the tunnel, but I'm now able to say, okay, a better idea of the traffic that I'm getting. How much of that is branded, how much of that is not branded? And the example that I'm showing here, I'm just looking at clicks, but you could do the same thing with the impression data as well to start to get an idea of what's going on. Okay, now that I know the breakdown of every single page, how much is branded and how much is non-branded, I can go back to my Google Analytics export of the pages, and now I can estimate the percentage of revenue that comes from branded versus non-branded. So remember, I pulled revenue data per page from Google Analytics. From Search Console, I know approximately how much traffic is branded and how much is non-branded, and then now we can pull it all together. So I can see in the first page, according to Google Analytics, it brought in $5,348 in revenue. Once again, this is a landing page. That is the page that the person entered the site on. Now I know that that breakdown of branded and non-branded is about 58% to 42%. So I can estimate that the revenue that this search query brought, this page brought, is about $3,000 brand revenue and $2,200 in non-branded revenue. Now remember, this is where the caveat is. Do I really know if the breakdown of traffic is the exact same as the breakdown in sales? It could be that all the sales came from branded. Could be all the sales came from non-branded. It's hard to know, but at least this is guiding me in the right direction with a logical perspective, with an assumption that the breakdown on the traffic, I can safely say that you have that breakdown on the revenue as well, and it can start to tell a story and give you an idea. So don't stop there. Now that I know the branded and non-branded revenue of each page, wouldn't it be cool now to grab that data and estimate the revenue at the keyword level as well? And I know we've got like an estimation, and I'm going to bring it to another estimation, but this will allow me once again to take that data and get a better idea at the keyword level of what's going on. So for the following example, I'm just going to be looking at non-branded keywords. You can do this with the branded keywords as well. So let's just take a look at this snapshot of the spreadsheet, and we're going to go through it actually column by column. So we've got our keywords. We've got whether they're branded or non-branded. I've got the page where that keyword sent traffic to. What's the value that Google Analytics said that page brought? What are the clicks, the total clicks to that page? What are the percentage of sales that individual keyword has based off of all the sales of that page, the keyword value, and then the clicks, impressions, and so on and so forth about that keyword. So let's go through it step by step, because it can be confusing when you're just looking at it in one shot. Okay, so the first thing we do is, remember, what we're looking at right now is primarily a Google Search Console export that we brought in. And now we want to pull in the non-branded revenue of the page using the VLOOKUP. And we're going to pull the revenue data from Google Analytics 4, and we're now going to pull that into this sheet so that I know what is the total value for every single page. Once again, we've got keyword 1. It brought traffic to the product number 11, and that brought in about $5,700. So now let's figure out what percentage of sales should this keyword get for this specific page. Because remember, product 11, lots of different keywords brought traffic to product 11. I want to know specifically, keyword 1, how many sales did keyword 1 specifically bring to product 11? First, we're going to do is we pull in total clicks that the page had. That I don't show in exactly how to do that here, but basically what you're going to do is you can export this data now directly from Search Console, or you can use a pivot table, but basically to figure out what are the total number of clicks that every single page had during that time period that you're looking at. So we now take the clicks that this keyword gets, where in this case, keyword number 1 got 5 clicks, and we divide it by the total clicks, which the total clicks that page received was 48. So in that case, 5 over 48 is 10%, and therefore I can assume that keyword 1 took or created 10% of the revenue of that total page. So once again, product 11, that landing page, people who entered that, they spent $5,700. And I want to assume that the keyword 1 specifically brought 10% of sales, which is about $596. So now what we do is, how do we uncover the keyword value? We kind of just said it in the previous slide, but we can take that page value, which is $5,700, and multiply it by the percentage of sales, and that will give us that keyword value. So once again, this is an estimation again, but it's getting us closer to having a perspective of now what's the value of every individual keyword specifically. Okay, so now that I've got this spreadsheet, I can see what I've marked keywords as branded and non-branded. I can pull in the data and show the value specifically for individual keywords and for pages. What can I actually do with this? So number 1 is I can answer that question of how many pages that I created or optimized produce dollars in non-branded traffic. Hopefully when you're doing your SEO work, you keep track of what are the pages that you've actually optimized or pages that you created. And once you have that, now you're able to go in and say, okay, I know that these are the ones that I worked on. And I can go in and see, I have that breakdown of branded and non-branded, and I can clearly say, based on a good estimation, this is how much money I brought from the work that I accomplished. Now, even more importantly is, I feel like, bullet point 2, especially in e-commerce. When you have products and categories, there's so many keywords that are related to a product. There's multiple different ways to name a product. So how do I know what works? It's difficult, right? So based on this revenue, I can identify the most critical keywords for a specific page. Because I can now see, with a pretty good guess, which keywords brought in the most revenue and which keywords didn't, right? So then I can come back in to the product or to the category page, and I can optimize the product title. Maybe I called it one way, but I see that actually other keywords brought in more revenue. I can update the meta title and description. I can update the product description and make it more friendly for AI overviews. And I can also, which is really key, is update my interlinking with anchor text among our other products. Now that I know what anchor text or what keywords are really important for each product, I can now go throughout the site and start generating more internal links using the right anchor text to send Google the correct signals when it comes to what this page is really about. And then finally, the important point is you invested a certain amount of money with our agency. You can say something like, even if we look at only 80% of the revenue, because remember, once again, this is an estimation. So if, let's say, based on my estimation, I say I got $100,000 through non-branded traffic, and because of this estimation, I might want to bring it down, right? Let me only give 80% credit. So let's say I brought $80,000, or you can bring it lower if you feel like. But based off of that, you can say, okay, I brought this amount of revenue from non-branded traffic, you paid the SEO agency this much money, and you can clearly show what that ROI looks like, right? So that this is an example from real life case study, but we did this, and the ROI that we were able to prove was a 6.6x, which was really good. So the big question is, what if this makes me look worse, right? Because until now, I've had smoking mirrors. I don't literally mean that. God forbid that anyone's doing that. But when you keep it a little bit abstract, then you don't have to be held. So what if I do this whole process, and suddenly now, the non-branded traffic isn't really high, the revenue's not really high. How am I going to prove? What am I going to do here? So the first thing is don't wait till you have to report, but you should be looking at this data all the time. So number one, you want to make sure to look at both your first click and your last click data, because they're going to tell different stories. It really depends on when do people come to your website through search. SEO can also affect the middle of the funnel, and from a basic Google Analytics report, this is harder to mine with the available tools. So keep in mind that there are always caveats, there are disclaimers, but it's something to think about. Number two, when it comes to e-commerce SEO, there's always the, what do I do? Am I optimizing products? Am I optimizing category pages? It's about creating blog posts and creating guides. It's difficult, right? Maybe your efforts more around blog posts, and you're getting a lot of traffic, but those blog posts aren't really pushing people to go further on the site and purchase. So can you do a better job of getting that traffic from the blog into the site itself? Something to think about. Number three, what date ranges are you looking at? Especially in e-com, certain sites are more seasonal, others are all year round, and therefore there are going to be differences in when you show. Avalon, which we showed right here, they're kind of dead, not dead, but relatively dead in the first 3 quarters of the year. In quarter 4, they go crazy. So it's a little bit difficult to, you're doing a lot of SEO work throughout the year in order to get the really big gains in Q4. So that's something that you have to consider as well. And then finally, AI overviews are here. This may affect your data. Right now, it's kind of in between when it comes to impressions and clicks. So all that data that we're getting in Search Console, how accurate is that from an AI overview world? So we're all praying and hoping that the data that we get there is going to be relevant from AI overviews, but we still have to see where that's going to be taking us. I went through that a little bit quicker than I expected, but thank you all very much, and I'm happy to answer any questions.